G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at two key knowledge points. Key knowledge point 323, that is Unit 3, Area of Study 2, and the third key knowledge point, which has us look specifically at 5 different motivation strategies. They are different things that a manager can implement within a business designed to increase employee motivation. And the following key knowledge point, 324, the fourth key knowledge point in this area of study, where we look at the advantages and disadvantages of each of these motivation strategies and determine whether or not they're going to work as a long-term or a short-term motivator and why that is. We're going to do these together because they are basically addressing the same content, and I find it's easier for students to identify a strategy and learn all about it before we move on to a next strategy and then try and come back later. We begin with performance-related pay, which is the first of the 5 strategies named in the study design. When we're talking about performance-related pay, essentially we're talking about rewarding an employee with money for meeting or exceeding some predetermined standard in their work. It may come in the form of a pay rise or a pay increase, where an employee will from that point forward take home more money in their salary. It might come in a bonus paid out at a particular time of year. Certainly in executive management level positions, an annual bonus around Christmas time is quite common, and typically the value of that bonus reflects the business's profitability over that financial year or that quarter or that calendar year. It varies from business to business, but a bonus around Christmas time is quite common. And certainly in the retail sector, commissions are very common, where an employee will be salaried to take home a certain amount of money each week or each month or each fortnight, however long their pay cycle is. But when you're working in retail, typically your sales staff, and you are expected to make sales. I know, for example, I have a brother and he had a job for a while selling shoes, and while he was salaried, which his salary wasn't very much, he was paid commission, and he would receive something like 15% of the total value of a sale that he processed. And in that way, employees were incentivized to work a bit harder for purposes of benefiting themselves financially. Now, when it comes to pay, just as it is when we're talking about using pay to address the physiological need in Maslow's hierarchy, it's an extrinsic motivator. That pay is coming from outside of the employee, and a manager can just give that money to an employee, and for that reason, it's an extrinsic motivator. And typically, research and just experience shows that performance-related pay only really works in the short term. Given that when we're talking about commissions, we're talking about the short term on repeat, it can work longer in that regard. But specifically, if there is a financial reward offered for performance, that's only going to motivate someone if they can see that they can earn that financial reward in a fairly short period of time. If you tell someone that you'll give them $100 at the end of the year if they go for a run every day, they're much less likely to actually maintain the effort required to earn that reward than if you said, I will give you $100 if you go for a run tomorrow. It's also true that performance-related pay really only works as a motivator for simple tasks. In the same way that it only works if the reward is available within a narrow time frame, the reward also has to be available as a result of minimum effort. Certainly, no one's going to go to huge lengths, massive challenge, completing complex tasks to earn a financial reward. Certainly if the financial reward isn't of a volume that the individual determines is worth the effort. So performance-related pay, it does work as a motivator, but usually only for quite simple tasks and usually only in the short term. If the time period is too long, it won't work as a motivator. Advantages of performance-related pay, because it does work in the short term, it can provide immediate motivation. If you say to someone, like I said, I'll give you $100 if you go for a run tomorrow, or I will give you 15% of the next sale you make and every sale thereafter, people are going to be motivated immediately. That carrot on the stick that you're dangling in front of them is going to motivate the employee to work harder to achieve whatever goal you've set for them. Definitely in a competitive context where we're talking about commissions, you might have 3 or 4 salespeople working in a business. The best performers are going to be the ones most rewarded. And definitely, if we consider the goal setting theory, we know that clarity is one of the requirements of a motivating goal. And certainly with performance related pay, typically there are very clear criteria or requirements that an employee must meet in order to be in order to achieve the incentive. There are disadvantages of performance related pay, of course. Particularly in a commissions-based environment, it's going to create a competitive culture. And while competition isn't inherently bad, when you have employees working against each other rather than working together, typically that can create problems in the corporate culture. Often, too, we've said that the best performers are the ones best rewarded. It's quite possible that in a business, the results aren't telling the whole story. And it might be possible in a retail environment that someone's sort of hogging the registers and they're putting through a lot of sales, but they haven't done a lot of the legwork to encourage the customer to buy this add-on and that add-on. And it's possible that the system could be misused or abused. And it's very possible that the results therefore wouldn't tell the whole story about who's actually doing the best work and the best performance. And as we've said, short-term motivator, performance-related pay only reliably works as a short-term motivator. Once someone has enough money, or someone perceives that they have enough money, typically things like commission will stop being appealing as a motivator. And certainly the reward has to be available in a short time frame, or it's not going to continue to work as a motivator. Career advancement is the second motivational strategy. Typically, when we're talking about career advancement, we're talking about a promotion where someone is given the opportunity to take on greater responsibility within the business. In and of itself, it can just be a motivator in the sense that someone might just seek to build their own status. And the opportunity to wield a bit more authority might be enough to motivate some employees to work towards that. Other benefits that go alongside it that also help to motivate people are access to the increased pay. So in a sense, some people will look at career advancement as a strategy to achieve increased status and performance-related pay. Certainly, the increase in status and authority and responsibility might help people build on their self-esteem needs, which might sound a bit familiar. Thank you, Maslow. And other benefits might just come from the opportunity to be more challenged and to experience the opportunities, experience the use of the application of skills and experience. I've sort of muddled that point, but you get what I'm saying. If we look at Maslow's, once again, the self-actualization level is all about challenge and experience, and certainly some employees might look at career advancement as an opportunity to encounter challenges and new experiences. In many cases, career advancement acts as a long-term motivator. You know that it's quite common for people to enter the workforce at the ground level. We've heard this story before. And to work in an entry-level job, and over time, by demonstrating their competency and their reliability, they're afforded career advancement opportunities. And some people end their careers 40, 50 years after they entered it in the same industry, in the same workplace, because they have worked long and hard to achieve career advancement. Of course, it is impossible to promote everyone. For every group of employees, there might only be 1 or 2 management positions. And so what we have to understand about career advancement is while it can and does motivate certain employees, many employees are going to see that career advancement isn't an option for them. They might be working along someone who has been in the business longer and they get it better, or they might have a fairly young leadership team and identify that those leaders, those managers aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And so career advancement opportunities aren't available to the employee at this time. Certainly, it does work as a long-term motivator, but because you can't promote everyone, career advancement is not going to motivate all employees equally all of the time. Obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages for career advancement also. One key advantage of career advancement is it will help the business retain their most talented employees. The employees that are attractive to managers when looking to fill career advancement opportunities are typically the most talented or the most exceptional performers. And given that you're largely talking about employees that have been with the business for a while, the employees' work history and consistency is demonstrated, and so employees are rewarded for past performance. And unlike performance-related pay, it's not just an immediate reward. Definitely, employees are going to have to demonstrate consistently high levels of efficiency and effectiveness in their work to be considered for these career advancement opportunities, and it's most definitely an employee's history that is taken into account when filling those positions. And definitely the business knows these employees before they bump them up. And so you can quite intentionally develop culture and fill positions with employees who demonstrate the skills and experience that you're looking for and that will be beneficial to that area of leadership in the business. Disadvantages. Much like performance-related pay, when only some people can achieve the reward, it may cause a competitive culture. It may build resentment in the employees that miss out on the career advancement opportunities. Certainly, if you've got a pool of employees working in quite a participative manner, and one of them is elevated to a position of leadership, it can be quite hard for that person to now suddenly be responsible for their friends. And in many cases, it can be difficult to start taking orders from your friends. And so resentment building in employees who are overlooked for promotion is a potential disadvantage of career advancement. Definitely resentful employees are less motivated and engaged than employees who are seeking opportunities or feel like opportunities are available to them. Definitely, if you're filling all of your leadership from within the business, there's a real lack of opportunity to bring in outside perspectives and people with diverse skills and experience. Even before the career advancement opportunity is filled, you might have that competitive sort of environment where rivalries are established. And once again, where employees are working against each other rather than working together, you're likely to create a culture that is less effective overall. And because you can't promote everyone, because any employee worth having in your business is going to be able to rationalize that not everyone can be promoted, as a strategy, it doesn't work for all employees. Investment in training, however, can work for all employees. Investment in training comes where a business allocates funds or time or just resources to build on employees' skills and knowledge and experience and to further develop their skills and knowledge and experiences. The outcome is that employees will be able to do their job or do certain aspects of their job to a higher level. We all know, we've all had that experience where you're learning a new skill or you're practicing a new hobby or something, and when you get it, when it works, that's a really good feeling. When you do a test or something and you get it back and it's got a really good result, that's a good feeling. And while you've got that good feeling, you're keen to continue working on that skill or that hobby. Definitely, this is true of most people, that little rush of adrenaline that you get when you're rewarded intrinsically, which when you feel that pride that you've done something well and that you've achieved, you've really achieved something, that's really motivating to keep trying. Now, in and of itself, that's a short-term thing. If you pick up a skateboard and you try skateboarding for a little while and you nail a kickflip, you're going to keep skateboarding for a little while because you're going to want to keep doing kickflips and see what other tricks you can do. It's going to be motivating for a short while. As long as you continue developing in the skill and keep having those sort of like eureka moments, that experience will become cyclical and can be long-term in that regard. Ongoing training opportunities provide the opportunity for ongoing motivation, or long-term motivation is how we phrase that. So in and of itself, investment in training, if it's a standalone event, if there's one training event, it will provide a bump in motivation for a short while. If you continually invest in training, you expect to see that your employees will experience long-term motivation or increase in their long-term motivation. An advantage is certainly that Investing in training shows the employee that the business values them and values their ability to do their jobs, values their skills as an individual, which is very important for building a positive culture. Definitely, investment in training can give a sense of job security for employees. There aren't too many businesses out there that invest in training and also view their employees as disposable or replaceable. So when a business does invest in training, it will help the employee have a sense that the business cares about me as an individual rather than just having someone to fill this job. With continuous investment in training and opportunities, the culture is going to be built around an environment of continual improvement and learning, and that's a very positive thing to build in your business. It certainly helps your business be more reactive, more flexible in responding to change events. If people within your business are prepared to learn new skills and are used to trying new things, that's definitely going to help your business in the future. And certainly for many employees, they'll view the development of skills and knowledge over time as helping them on their road to career advancement. So for employees that were already motivated by the prospect of career advancement, they're going to really value investment in training from their employer. One disadvantage with regards to investment in training, it comes from the word investment. It's often expensive. And if a business is working with narrow profit margins or is having trouble in the marketplace, perhaps macroeconomic forces like a global pandemic impact the business's ability to make a profit or just generate revenue, investment in training can be problematic from a financial perspective. And certainly, if you've invested heavily in training an employee, there's absolutely no guarantee that the employee is going to stay with your business. In the corporate world, headhunting employees, headhunting successful, highly effective employees with a reputation themselves occurs. And so you've got to be aware that your employees at any stage may leave your business. And definitely, your training may be wasted. If you are training all of your employees up to a very high standard, but there just aren't enough jobs for employees with skills at that level, then you're not only facing the potential of your employees leaving the business, you're kind of creating an environment where your employees are going to leave the business. Because if you've given all of your employees skills in training and management, but there just aren't that many training or management jobs in your business, then they're going to be very highly skilled and attractive to your competitors who may have a need for employees with training and training and education skills, particularly in that specific industry. Support is another of the strategies we need to talk about. Now, generally, support is quite difficult to define. The way we talk about it is to say that if an employee is having a problem in their life that would negatively impact their life or their work, then support is any strategy implemented by a manager to address that and to help the employee resolve whatever problem it is or to deal with whatever problem it is that is negatively impacting their lives or work. It could be the breakdown of a romantic relationship. It could be financial problems. It could be health problems. It could be a feeling of not being valued within the workplace. It could be workplace conflict between two employees. There are all manner of problems that can affect someone's work and their personal life that a manager might be able to assist with. But the study design just lists support, so we've got to keep this quite broad. But I want you to be thinking about in the context of any problem that can come up, support is whatever a manager could do to assist an employee. A couple of specific examples might include employee assistance programs, where management in a large business or a large organization might implement the provision of confidential counseling services, where an employee has access to a psychologist or a counselor to whom they can go and they can access counseling, and it will all be confidential. The employer won't know who's gone to access this service. They certainly won't get session notes where they'll be able to pry through the personal details of their employees' lives. But the provision of those counseling services might assist many employees to talk about and work through problems that they're having in their life that might impact their work. Certainly mentoring of new employees is a common strategy, certainly within AFL clubs, that new players to the AFL club will often be hooked up with more experienced players within a side. Typically, well, not typically necessarily, but it's common that new players will also be offered housing opportunities, lodging opportunities with more experienced players and their families. So these players can be more readily brought into the culture of the club and will have support should they be finding that the AFL experience is very stressful or very demanding in ways that the player is having trouble managing themselves. And then certainly general managerial support during difficult or demanding times. If work is getting particularly busy, perhaps the manager says, hey, look, you've stayed 2-3 hours past closing or past the end of your shift early this week. Why don't you come in at midday tomorrow? Like, we're not going to call it leave. Just like take some time for yourself. I can tell you're tired. You need to sleep in. Something like that. Whenever a manager goes out of their way to provide support to an employee, it falls under the umbrella of support as a management strategy. Depending on what a manager does, it could be a short-term or a long-term motivator. But if the manager is supportive of their employees consistently, and there is a culture and understanding that the management in a business are supportive, then we expect that employees are going to feel supported, they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel secure, and that will create an environment in which employees are motivated in the long term. An advantage of support is it can improve the mental well-being of employees. If the problems the employees are facing are related to mental health and mental well-being, things like stress and anxiety, then a supportive environment at work will no doubt help employees manage that stress and anxiety. And it will build an environment in which the mental well-being of employees is likely higher than an environment where that support isn't present. Support will build a strong culture in the business. And like I said, if the support is ongoing, there'll be a strong culture of ongoing support around the employees. The employees will feel safe in, and they will largely be motivated just by being in that space. With employee programs, managers may not be aware with the challenges employees are facing. Certainly, if, as we're talking about, there's that confidential counselling. Employees might access that without managers knowing, and managers might not be aware that the employees are struggling at all. And in that case, it's very difficult for a manager to adequately provide support. So while that's not necessarily a disadvantage of support overall, it's a disadvantage of a type of support. And it might be possible for an employee to seek support from their manager in certain circumstances. But if the nature of the problems employees are facing are kept secret from the management, then the management won't have the opportunity to implement support. And certainly, there's a reason that confidential counselling is useful in some businesses. In many high stress, high productivity workplaces like law firms, accessing or needing support is not often seen as a positive thing in younger or newer employees. Typically, those environments have such a high turnover rate that it's employees with incredible amounts of resilience that last and access career advancement opportunities. So typically, we can say one disadvantage of support is really it only works if there's a positive culture where management are open to supporting employees and they see that provision of support is actually a good thing for the business and for the employee. And finally, we've got sanction. It's quite different than the other management strategies. Sanction is where penalties are imposed on employees for poor performance or for disobedience. And it works by creating an environment or a culture of fear that discipline will be implemented if employees don't meet certain criteria or if they step out of line. And so what we say is it's motivation through the threat of discipline. Examples of sanctions that could occur: the loss of hours, particularly in a casual environment. Casual employment environment, not just casual like hanging out at the park. But if you're typically rostering an employee for 10 or 20 hours a week, and maybe their sales figures aren't good enough or they show up late one day, perhaps you just cross off their shifts for the next week and that's their punishment. That's the sanction you've imposed on them for that failure to perform. and it would serve as an example to other employees to not participate in those behaviors themselves. Rather than motivating employees to excel, it's motivating employees to meet the minimum standard consistently, or to exceed the minimum standard. Another example of a sanction that could be applied to someone is just the recording of the incident of poor performance or disobedience on their employee or employment record, which may harm their future prospects. It might harm their progress towards career advancement, which certainly for employees that are motivated to access career advancement opportunities is going to be quite a threat. And then more common, or rather less common, but things we're all aware of, demotions or sacking someone, terminating their employment, are also possible sanctions that could be implemented in an employment space where if an employee consistently underperforms in their role or is disobedient in some way. Normally, sanction only works as a short-term motivator, and what we understand of human motivation is if you continually threaten people, in fact, they will become entirely demotivated. So while sanction does work as a short-term motivator, if you overuse it, if you just create a culture of fear and of oppression, your employees are going to be incredibly demotivated indeed. So some advantages of sanction: employees respond to sanction, or some employees respond to sanction. If you have a very positive culture, a learning culture, a supportive culture, and you implement sanction, you'd expect all of your employees are going to take notice of that. Obviously, it's going to have been quite a serious incident where you provided opportunities for the employee to improve in their performance. And if you've had to implement sanction at that point, most employees will understand that it's not the managers just lashing out. In a culture where there is a lack of support or managers do just lash out randomly, some employees may respond to the sanction, but it's definitely dependent on whether the employees expected it or not. And it may bring employees into line. Certainly if you've had a real problem with lateness in your staff, they're showing up late to shifts, or some staff are just not showing up at all, the implementation of some sanctions might well work to bring employees into line with that policy. However, sanction has some serious disadvantages. It normally only works as a short-term motivator. And like we said, if you use sanction repeatedly over time, it will serve to demotivate your employees. And so when it works as a short-term motivator, inevitably you're going to have to implement some other motivation strategy to try and improve performance outside of just the event of sanction itself. Because it's short-term, if you then see the problem starting to come back and implement sanction again, and then the problem starts to come back and you implement sanction again, eventually you're going to cause resentment in your employees. And disgruntled employees, particularly employees that have been subject to sanction for too long, they might take action in response. And that might be as simple as they just leave the business and they go and work somewhere else, or it might even come in the form of sort of organized action. Perhaps they strike, or perhaps they work to contract only, and try and implement pressure back on the management to change their behavior because the employees feel as a collective that the sanctions are punitive and not helpful. In summary for this key knowledge point, unmotivated and disengaged employees aren't effective, they're not efficient. Their performance and productivity is likely to be poor and or mediocre. So a manager might look to implement motivation strategies to build a workforce that works hard towards the achievement of objectives. Here's our universal truth for this area of study: engaged and motivated employees are more productive and efficient. So if you as a manager can implement a strategy to engage or motivate your employees, you expect your employees are going to be more productive and efficient. The 5 motivation strategies in this key knowledge point are performance-related pay, career advancement, investment in training, support, and sanction. If you know all of them, you're good to go. That's all for today. See you next time.